Normally, when I make a movie, I started off with some flashy visual effects to really capture the audience's attention. Not this time. This project is different. This project is real. I will now tell you how I found out Sarita's story. While I'm going to discuss a lot of scientific information, I would like you to remember one thing. This story is real. In school, I was assigned a project in biology about a genetic disease. I needed to make a movie. My dad once told me his best friend, who now lived in Israel, has a daughter with cystic fibrosis. CF is a genetic disease that would fit perfectly to my project. I dumped my stuff on the bed and got to work. I was tired, but I pushed myself, thinking I might as well start. I typed up some questions on my email to my dad's friend. I knew he would be happy to help me, but I also realized how touchy a subject this was. Therefore, I was careful not to ask any questions that might be inappropriate. I hit send. Since it was going to be at least a day before they would respond, I decided to look up some facts about CF. Resisting the pull of Wikipedia, I found some legitimate-looking medical websites that had some pretty promising information. I found out that cystic fibrosis is one of the most common genetically inherited diseases in the world. What really shocked me was that about 25% of Ashkenazi Europeans are carriers. That means millions. A carrier has a copy of the defected gene, but are not affected. Their children, though, could be. Out of those, about 30,000 Americans have the disease itself. These numbers made me realize how real this was. This wasn't just the average project. I was dealing with something real, which was happening right now. At this point, I was actually intrigued as to how CF really works. I had a feeling I would get some very detailed answers to my questions, and I wanted to know the basics before I got them. I found out that cystic fibrosis was an autosomal recessive disease. That means that both parents must have one copy of the defected CF gene in order for the offspring to get the disease. Even so, there's only a 25% chance of the child being affected because the parents have a normal gene to share as well. The gene that controls cystic fibrosis is called the cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulator, or the CFTR. The gene is on the 7th chromosome, and its job is to release chloride from the cell. Chloride is the ion that makes up sodium chloride, or salt. The result is a salt imbalance, which is also the cause of all of CF symptoms. At that point, I was too tired to pay attention, so I went to sleep, preoccupied. A few days later, I got an email from Julia, Sarita's mom. I opened it, feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, because I knew that she must have put a real effort into helping me, which I really appreciated. My first impression of her email was wow. The page was longer than I could have possibly hoped for. An interesting thing that I spotted right away was the diagnostic process of diagnosing cystic fibrosis. It wasn't as smooth as the movies portray it. In fact, Sarita was twice diagnosed with a false negative for CF. How is this possible? Julia explained how because there are many types of the disease, it is impossible to test for every single type. Therefore, the doctors simply test for the most common, which did not cover Sarita's case. As a baby, Sarita had underwent surgery to remove an unrelated flaw in her stomach. On the most part, however, she was a very healthy and normal baby until she reached the age of 9 months. At that time, she started getting sick very often and was eventually diagnosed officially with cystic fibrosis. I want to backtrack for a second to explain what CF actually does to one's organs. One of the most commonly affected organs in cystic fibrosis are the lungs. Fluid buildup in the lungs prevents the patient from properly breathing. Therefore, Julia explained, her daughter has to undergo respiratory therapy or breathing therapy every day. This is only a portion of the daily treatment Sarita must partake. She has to take enzymes to help her pancreas, as well as saline solutions for extra salt to stabilize her saline imbalance. She must also remember to always drink a lot to avoid dehydration. Her daily rituals of treatment often make her late for school and also make it hard to organize playdates. Again, I really couldn't help but think about how lucky I am. Most of us don't have such a constant worry to carry on our shoulders. It really makes you appreciate life, you know? It's a truly mind-numbing prospect that 25% of people in our vicinity carry this gene, which can completely alter one's life. If the affected child's parents have other siblings, there's a 25% chance he too will be affected. And if he isn't affected, there's still a 66% chance that he carries the gene. Depending on that particular child's spouse, there's still a chance that he might pass on cystic fibrosis to his children. A high percentage of cystic fibrosis patients are infertile, but not sterile. This means that a physical defect does not allow them to properly reproduce, while the actual sperm or egg cells are perfectly functional. There is, however, a silver lining. Through extensive physical therapy, taking pancreatic enzymes and salts, progress can be made. Sarita also takes vitamins. In recent years, there's been a lot of progress in research. Since it was discovered in 1989, cystic fibrosis made tremendous progress. Over 900 mutations were discovered, and clinical trials are being held. Thank God, Sarita is doing very well right now, so she cannot partake in these clinical trials. This is Sarita's family pedigree. People affected with cystic fibrosis are colored in, while people that are not are left blank. Below each family member's name is a genotype. In other words, this tells us what copies of the cystic fibrosis gene, or alleles, that person has. Capital G represents a healthy allele, while lowercase g means the allele is mutated. For example, Sammy has a capital G and a lowercase g. That means he has one mutated gene and one healthy gene. Notice how Sarita's genotype is comprised of two lowercase g's, which shows that she is affected. So now you know my story. I told you, didn't I? This isn't my usual project. Is this real enough for you?